And I'm going to start off by asking each of you for 5 minutes to give us your view of this discussion. But the way I'd like to focus this is this even the right question? You know, the question of can Facebook replace face-to-face?
I think the answer to that question is probably, for me anyway, a resounding no, because I don't think that Facebook can or should replace face-to-face communications. In fact, what makes Facebook so different and unique compared to past experiments on the internet or own community is that it's all about real people who actually know each other in real life. But the idea that it would ever replace face-to-face communication in you know, activism or civic engagement, I think is unlikely.
Bill, why don't I turn it over to you, and the same question.
I think it's proxy for a larger and very important question, namely, what effect is the very rapid development and adoption of new information technologies of all kinds having on the practice of citizenship in the United States? That, I think, is the fundamental question. You know, first of all, we know that there has been a big change driven by IT developments in ways in which people get access to news. And those changes are occurring very rapidly. The internet has gone from 9% to 24% in just 2 election cycles as a principal source. Meanwhile, as everybody knows, nightly news and newspapers are crashing. Another rapidly changing area is fundraising. Between 2004 and 2008, the use of the internet as a fundraising tool has tripled, and this is enormously significant, it seems to me. Another big change, you know, is the viral nature of the technology, which is good news and bad news. I don't think we'd be having the same kind of subterranean conversation about whether Barack Obama is or is not a Muslim were it not for the way that these rumors have, you know, have proliferated almost below the radar screen of the traditional media.
There's an argument to be made that information technology is pretty good at dispelling those myths, because you can very quickly go online and find an authoritative source, and you know, Obama's actually done a pretty good job, I think, of using all of the traffic that he drives to his website to dispel specific myths.
Has it helped discourse or hurt it?
First, let me begin with what the American people think about the answer to that question, because there's some very interesting recent survey data from a Pew study. Let me pull it out for you. Here's one of the questions put to internet users by the Pew study just a couple of months ago. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? The internet is full of misinformation and propaganda that too many voters believe is accurate. And 60% of respondents agreed with that proposition, and only 32% disagreed. And that goes to, it seems to me, one of the problems that the internet has not solved, indeed has made worse, and in the nature of things probably cannot solve. In the old days, for better or for worse, there were gatekeepers. There was stuff that wouldn't get through the filters, and therefore the people simply wouldn't know about. And is that a good thing? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, that depends on answers to questions like the following. Would the country have been better or worse off if Americans in the 1930s had known about Lucy Mercer? In other words, I'll be old-fashioned and answer your question. I think a world without gatekeepers is a worse world than a world with gatekeepers, even though the gatekeepers are not infallible. Okay, I've given you an answer.
How about today's world where the gatekeepers are like all fallible?
Yeah. No, there are no gatekeepers. The world in which we're now living is a world with no gatekeepers.
I mean, in terms of civic engagement and doing common good, et cetera, I mean, those kinds of things that I think most of us, all of us, want to promote. It's sort of a big help on one hand, and it's an open question then about, does it help in the discourse and discussion about the nation's future? in a financial crisis, now that information and viral stuff moves so fast, if all of a sudden tomorrow it's a certain bank is about to go, and that's spreading all over this way, that's not necessarily a good thing for the financial crisis of the country. In other words, you know, the 1929 crash, how would, in this new world, what would that, what's that kind of start looking like?
You know, let's not disagree where we don't disagree. I absolutely agree that the internet is a fantastically positive tool, and electronic and information technology in general, for latent communities of like-minded people to find themselves and to organize themselves. But to take the specific question that you put on the table, when I was making notes for this, one of the words that I wrote down to myself is velocity, okay? It speeds everything up, and the example that you just gave is an example of speeding everything up. Is it good for the financial system that people are forced to react with no time for reflection? No, I don't think so. Is it good for our political system when there's no such thing as a news cycle? It is a constant news cycle. I don't think so, because it gives campaigns incentives to enter into a mode of what I'll call hyper-reactivity, you know, where instead of thinking about what you really want to do, you have the capacity to respond to what your, you know, what the press spokesman for the other campaign just said, and you do it. And you know, and I think it generates more noise and less information. The heat to light ratio is not improved by this.
You also have the capacity to go and do more research.
That's
right.
true.
With this latest economic crisis, my reaction is to just go online and keep reading.
Mm-hmm.
My reaction is actually to not to react, but to just keep reading and thinking and processing more information, because what, you know, the little bit that you get filtered through the mass media lens is so unsatisfying, and it's so repetitive. And if that were all there were, if it stopped with that, then I think you'd see a lot of people reacting, because there's no outlet for their anxiety.
You said that it's a like-minded people can come together, take like-minded action, and mobilize. Do you see the potential for that like-minded thing being working together for the good of the country?
At Brookings, we've just spent 3 years working on a project, you know, sort of an in-depth study of changes in political polarization in the United States. And we've been driven to the conclusion, and not all of us started there when the study began, that we have indeed become a more polarized society, and our politics has become more polarized, and not just at the elite level, but also at the mass level in the past 40 years. That polarization has made it very difficult for the country to come together because definitions of the common good now differ, and conceptions of how the world works differ. So if you ask me, are these developments that we're talking now contributing to the reduction of polarization and the expansion of unity within the country? I would have to say, no, they aren't. They are intensifying political and civic niches. That's sometimes good and sometimes not so good.
Sean, you want to take a crack at it?
Sure. I agree with all of that thus far. Actually, we're in complete agreement about what's happened up until this point in time. I think that to understand what's going to happen from this point forward, you have to understand what's different about this particular technology boom on the internet, what distinguishes it from what happened in 1998 through 2000. You saw most of the community that you know, we typically associate with community getting established around 1994, 1995, 1996, you know, with companies like e-groups, which became Yahoo groups, with, you know, things like Move On a little bit later on. These online communities had one characteristic in common, which is that they connected people who had a shared interest, who didn't necessarily know each other beforehand.
Absolutely right.
Right?
That's right.
They were meeting on the internet for the first time, and that may have established a connection which they took into the real world. What's so unique about everything that's happened since 2004, and I include MySpace, Friendster, Facebook, and all the other social networks, is that they're not virtual communities, they're real communities. And that one true social network that we're all a part of is getting represented day by day more and more accurately online. And that opens up a lot of possibilities to build tools on top of that system that give ordinary people, users of Facebook, users of MySpace, the power to actually get things done.
We are out of time, unfortunately, because I would have liked to keep this thing going. But please join me in thanking Sean and Bill for.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.